So the sessions that are designed today, roughly about 50 minutes each with breaks in between and lunch in the middle, will focus on first kind of an overarching vision for Christian initiation, and then break it down according to three aspects of the process: liturgical, catechetical, and pastoral, followed by kind of a sum of sort of where does that take us and sort of where do things sum up. I think it's very appropriate that we do this on the feast of St. Andrew, for the sake of the apostle, of course, who was the, if you will, quick evangelist to his brother for the sake of Jesus, but actually more for a personal reason for my sake. As Jesse was noting, the parish that I served as a DRE for 15 years, it was named St. Mary's of Piscataway. Piscataway is a word unfamiliar to most people. To some of you, it reminds you of a town in New Jersey. But its source name is actually in Maryland, my home state, because the Piscataways were the tribe of first contact for the first Catholic foundation in the original 13 colonies. The only colony founded by Catholics was Maryland, founded by the two ships, the Ark and the Dove, which is sort of our Mayflower, which landed in 1634 at the bottom of where the Potomac and the Chesapeake Bay meet at a place called St. Clement's Island offshore, where they celebrated the very first Mass in the English colonies on the Feast of the Annunciation. They literally waited offshore for a couple days so that they could land on the Feast of the Annunciation, and celebrated on an island about 400 yards offshore of a point of a peninsula of southern Maryland. So the tribe that occupied southern Maryland at the time was called the Piscataways. Right? And so they were the first contact tribe. And I mentioned that the day is a very appropriate day feast-wise for St. Andrew, because the priest in charge of the mission, one of two priests on the ship, was Andrew, Father Andrew White. And Father Andrew White, he was the chief missionary. He was a Jesuit, of course, the Jesuits being a very strongly missionary order in the 17th century, the 1600s. And he went on to go ahead and leave to his subordinate the English colonists, a majority of whom were Protestant. Maryland, though founded by Catholics, never was majority Catholic. It was always population-wise, as it is today, majority Protestant. And so most of the people on the Ark and the Dove were Protestants. But they were served by Englishmen who were Catholics, at least initially. So his assistant he left down with the colonists in the little area that the Indians graciously gave them, which became known as St. Mary's City, appropriately enough, and was the first capital of the colony of Maryland. And Father Andrew White, his preference was to evangelize the Piscataway tribe. And so he spent the 6 years that he was able to be on the mission field before being taken back by Puritan attackers of the colony 6 years later in chains to England. And that reality for him meant that he spent those 6 years living among the Indian tribe, the Native American tribe that was there, in their native town called Pascatoa. And the chief there, all of these things are findable in the first-hand accounts, which I've had the privilege of laying my gloved hands upon in the archives of Georgetown University, the Jesuit archives, where Father Andrew White's original journal in Latin exists. As you well know, Jesuit missionaries sent back reports to Rome regularly. They call them relations, so they're referred to as the Jesuit relations from various missionary places. And all of Father Andrew White's original relations survived. And so in first-hand account, we have the story of the very first evangelization work by the Catholic Church in the original 13 colonies. I know that our brothers and sisters up in Canada and in northern New York get most of the press for the first martyrdoms in the 1650s, St. Isaac Jogues, the French Jesuits. But the English Jesuits, less pressed because there was no opposition. We know there was battle with the Iroquois, etc., right? Martyrdoms. But the Piscataways were peaceful, and they received the gospel peacefully. So it didn't make the headlines as much. There were no martyrs in the early mission field of Maryland. there was successful evangelization. And there was the very first baptism, Catholic baptism in the original 13 colonies, was the Piscataway chief. Prior to the 1650s, prior to Kateri Tekakwitha, prior to anything that they did in the French territories, this Catholic baptism on July 5th, 1640, of the chief and 150 members of his tribe, along with his wife, 2 of his children, was the first time that Catholic baptisms blessed American Indian souls in the original 13 colonies. It's a story most of you don't know, I imagine, right? But it is the first place that the order of Christian initiation penetrated the American mission field in the original 13 colonies.